fortunate to have Jenn Alberts in today. She's going to give us kind of a background on her photographic journey and then do a little bit of retouching. She's a grad of the Falls, this program, and she's also a graduate of Brooks Institute, and is a working professional in photography and retouching. So right up your alley. You should, hopefully we'll have some question and answers at the end, but welcome.
Thank you. Hi everybody, thanks for coming. So I just want to, I'll show you guys some of my work as I go along and talk to you a little bit about where I've been and how I got here. I'm super honest about where I've been and how hard it was, because I want everybody to know this isn't an easy journey if you're going to be a professional photographer. There's a lot of people in competition for that job, and so I want to talk a little bit about what it takes to get there, what it takes to be successful, maybe some things that you might have to give up, or some little bumps that I've had along the way personally, because I don't want people to think I just, I feel so often you hear somebody's story, you see the success, you see somebody's studio, and you don't really hear how they got there. And I think some of my journey too, I'm still a photographer, but primarily I'm a high-end retoucher, and I really love doing that work. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about, how I got there. So I'll talk a little bit about that. We could do like a quick question and answer, and then I have a little bit of a demo for you. I'm not gonna necessarily teach you anything about retouching, but I want to show you like a cool breakdown of like one of these really big files that I've worked on, and just kind of show you some interesting things that maybe, whether you be a photographer or a retoucher, or how you would work with those people together, you could kind of see how much goes into it and how a retoucher can improve your photography as well. So I'll start by telling you, I started the program here at the Falls. We had a whole different building. It was just one story. We did still look out onto the beautiful view here, but we didn't even have digital back then. I'm not trying to age myself out, but so it's been a long time. So I did Running Start. So I was still a high schooler when I did the program here, and I loved it. I was really ready for it. I knew I wanted to be a photographer since I was in 7th grade. I took a photography class and absolutely connected with it. And I loved art, but honestly, I'm not the best painter or anything at that. And when I did photography, I was like, yes, this is what I want. This is how I want to create and show people things. So photography was always it for me. I knew right from the start that's what I wanted to do. So I was fortunate to learn about the Running Start program. So by the time I went through this program and I graduated, I was only 18 years old. And honestly, it was a really wonderful foundation, but I felt a little stunned at graduation. Like, I don't believe that I had thought a whole lot about where I was going, what I was going to do when I graduated. I kind of hoped something would come my way, and it didn't. So good advice for anybody is to start looking before you graduate. Start talking to people in the industry. Start talking to people that like to do what you do, and start asking some questions about how you can get there. I think people are really willing to talk to students, and once you're a graduate and you're a job seeker, the door is going to be slammed in your face. No, thank you. We're not looking for you. We don't want you. But as a student, I think people are willing to help students. They want to talk to you. They want to help you with your journey. So really dig into that. Take the opportunity while you're a student to reach out to photographers in town or out of town or wherever it is that you want to go, wherever you want to end up, and start asking some questions. I was lucky to have a really wonderful instructor that we had here at the Falls, and he directed me to a program at a school called Brooks Institute of Photography that was down in Santa Barbara. Unfortunately, that program is no more, but at the time, it was probably one of the top 3 photography schools in the world. And also, fortunately, my parents had the money to send me there. We had a cool agreement, the Falls did, with Brooks, where they let us transfer in. So I didn't have to take the full program there. Because this was such a good program, it was one of the very few in the country that was able to transfer to that program. So I transferred into that program, and I'll just scroll through a couple of these so you get tired of looking at the same ones. So I transferred down to Brooks, and that really helps me. I think maybe partly because of age. Like at 18, I just wasn't ready to branch out, and there's not a lot of like studios here in town that are looking for someone to hire. Not that it's impossible, but a lot of the photographers that are working here are kind of a one-man show who are hiring some like talent every once in a while, or some assistants, or a second shooter, or things like that. There's not a lot of jobs here, I don't think, that are in photography. So having the opportunity to get some more education and learn some more things really helped me. And one thing I do have to say about that, I wanted to tell you guys, because I share this information. My son is a student here in the program as well, and I try to tell him, do things that you don't like in classes, even if you're like, but that's not what I like to do. Personally, I like to do food. I love food. Food's my favorite thing to shoot. I love shooting commercial stuff. I love being in the studio to kind of dink around, and people is the last thing I like. I never liked shooting people, but you can see like this photo is a chef. It's a local chef in town, and he won an award for a food chef thing, and I went out to shoot the food, but while I was there, the magazine said, could you also shoot the chef? And if I didn't have those skills in shooting people, I would have been either scared, or I don't think I'd say no. I'd probably figure it out, but it would have been more intimidating. But I was like, absolutely, that'd be great, no problem. And I like being able to say no problem. So having a foundation of a lot of different skills, and if you have a class where you're like, oh, what a drag, I don't like doing retouching. I love retouching, maybe you don't like doing it. But it's always good to have that foundation. Also, so you could speak to a retoucher. Like I do some retouching for Chris because he doesn't really like doing it. But he knows what's involved, so he can talk to me in terms that as a photographer, he can explain this is what I want you to do for retouching. So I think all those classes, everything that is offered, keep that in mind. If there's something you don't like, it might help you in the future get to where you want to go. So when I finished at Brooks, this is back in 2000, it was a long time ago, I was offered this really awesome job because I wanted to be a food photographer, right? This was my goal. This is what I had my final portfolio on and everything like that. So one of the instructors at Brooks got me this but first job at this big food studio in LA. And I was so excited. I did not care for LA, but I was like, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna make it work. I'm gonna get my start. So I went down to the studio, and here, I'll show you guys some food photography while we're talking about that. I went to this food studio, and it was an interesting experience. So I get there, and this was like a normal day, and people are doing some odd things. There was people doing drugs in the back, and I'm not a stranger to having a few drinks or doing something, but this was like middle of a work day. People are doing coke in the back, and I'm like, oh, that's just really not what I expected. And the lead photographer that worked there, honestly, he was a little creepy, and I'm still 20 years old now at this point, and I was like, warning bells, right? Like I felt really uncomfortable, but I felt like, okay, well now that I've graduated this secondary education, and I'm still a little bit scared, this opportunity came up. It's in the field that I want to do. I now feel like I have to take it. Because I'd been in that situation before, graduating from the Falls, where I'm like, I don't know what to do. And so this time something's laid out for me. I found a place to live. I was just feeling horrible. Like I did not want to do this. I called, my boyfriend lived in New York. I called him and I told him. I called my mom and I told him, and they both said, don't go then. And I'm like, what? But that's what I have to do. Ultimately, I decided not to go. I moved back home to Seattle, and it was the best choice I ever made. So also, follow your heart, follow your gut. If something tells you like a situation doesn't feel right to you, a job doesn't feel right to you, you don't feel like it's gonna line up with your goals, even though it feels like this is what I want. I ended up getting a job offer in San Francisco about 6 months later, and it was the best job I ever had. So I was just in this really up and down after school, like feeling like, oh no, I didn't take this opportunity. And that photographer called Brooks and let all the instructors there know that I was going to be blacklisted and I was a horrible person for turning down his opportunity. What a thing to go through. And then I was so young, I just felt, oh no, it's over for me. And then I ended up running a studio downtown San Francisco at 20 years old. And I had worked there for a couple months. I worked for pets.com. And I got the opportunity through someone I knew. So that is another big thing, I think, about reaching out to people, getting to know people, having a network, especially in the town you want to move to. This happened to be a friend that I had gone to school with, and he heard about the opportunity in San Francisco, and he's like, you'd be perfect for that. They need somebody to do digital. They want somebody who knows all this digital stuff, who can, because they're a .com company. And it ended up being a really amazing opportunity. And I worked there for about a year and a half until the .com went under. So part of what I'm telling you too is my entire career has just been like this. Every art department I worked for, we were the first to get cut. Every big cool tech company I worked for went out of business. It's just been a roller coaster ride and of jumping one opportunity to the next. So it's not a real easy road. I think being an artist, being a photographer, it's finding a place that fits for you for now, and figuring out how you want to grow your business and your portfolio and things like that. So after San Francisco, I moved back to Seattle. So I've been kind of like all up and down the West Coast a lot. I moved back to Seattle, and I worked at a lot of commercial studios in Seattle, doing things like I worked for Eddie Bauer, for Nordstrom, REI. I worked for a place that was kind of like Pier 1 Imports, that we built these big sets. So I did a lot of really cool stuff there. I got a lot of experience as a commercial photographer. I finally got to be a food photographer, and I hated it. So this road that I thought, okay, gosh, I've like blood, sweat, and tears worked so hard. I finally, I was working for the studio in Seattle called Iridio, and they had a big portion of their business was food. And I was like, oh, finally, I have made it. I got to the point where I really wanted to be. I'm shooting food every day. We were shooting a bunch of cookbooks. It was the most boring job I've ever had in my life. So as a student, I would, come up with these ideas of what I wanted to shoot. I'm going to shoot this really cool, halibut dinner. I'm going to come up with what to put in the background, what to put in the foreground, what kind of napkin to use, everything that's going to go in there. I'm going to choose the lighting. I'm going to choose the props and everything like that. I'm going to go out and I'm going to maybe also make the food. I love to make food. So that was a part of the drive for me with the food photography, is that I get to be so creative. Now, as a food photographer in a big studio that's making money, I don't get to do any of that. There's an art director, a producer, a stylist, a food stylist. There's this entire team of people there to support you as the photographer, which is cool because you don't necessarily have time to do all those things. I just didn't really realize that. So the only thing I'm in charge of now, setting the light up and taking the picture. And I was like, oh man, this is boring. After about a week of doing it, I was like, I guess this isn't really what I want to do. So I was like, well, how can I do what I want to do? And I visited a food studio where a woman had her own business, and then she did more creative things, and she was really awful to me. So it's interesting, like, I don't understand. She was very rude. I assisted her for a couple days, and she was a very nasty person. And just agreed to let me assist for her, but then said, I'm going to just send you out on errands all the time, or have you mop up this seafood slop that's on the floor. I never got to see what they were doing in studio, and it was really disappointing for me. So you gotta try to grab these opportunities and squeeze your way in places and ask, can I come see what you do? But it won't always work out. Sometimes you'll have those people that aren't very nice. But had I maybe done a little bit more of that ahead of time when I wasn't looking for work, and I could, like, now's a great time while you're in school. Go see those people. Go find out. Ask to sit alone for a shoot. If you like food photography, I might have found that out sooner. It was okay. I was getting paid for that freelance job. It just changed my trajectory a little bit. I didn't really understand the ins and outs of that. So it was a learning experience that I could have learned earlier, but I did learn at that point. So after I worked in Seattle for a few years, I had a full-time job for Magnolia Hi-Fi, which is like, you know, we sold big TVs and stuff like that. And so we go in and do these like cool lifestyle shots in people's homes and upscale homes in Seattle. And I worked for them for a few years, and then Best Buy bought them out, and there goes the art department again. So kind of like I always had this thing, like as soon as I put a framed photo of like me and my husband on my desk, or, you know, me and my dog or whatever it was, I would get laid off. And so I had like a superstition about that. I was like, I'm not going to do it. I worked there for about 1.5 years, and I eased that photo up on there. Sure enough, that's why I bought them out, and we got laid off. And so I ended up on this thing where they paid me a lot extra to tell them how to do my job. I ended up with this huge extra load of cash. And my husband at the time was an editor. He had gone through the program at Seattle Community College. And he really wanted to be a film editor for movies. So we took that extra cash and moved down to Los Angeles. And that was hard. It took probably 3 months just to find work to pay the bills. Rent was really expensive. We did find a place that was kind of near the ocean, which was great. I ended up working at Disney, which was really cool. So I got to work in their consumer department, where we, you know, took pictures of the mostly little stuff they sell at like the Disney store, or the Disney, like when you go to Disneyland and you go in the like little market there. So we took lots of pictures of little pins and things like that. So I worked for them for a while, and he was kind of trying to figure out his way in the business. And so I had decided, well, that, you know, what would be the coolest job is doing movie posters. I thought that would be the coolest thing. So I found somebody that was hiring for that. I went for an interview and talked to this guy. And he was really cool. And he told me, this is the last thing that you want to do. Do not do this job. It is the worst job in the entire industry. And I was like, okay, do you just not like me? Like, why would you ward me off of this job that you're looking to hire for? And he's like, you just seem like a really nice person, and I don't want you to end up in this industry. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he directed me to this place called Rocket Studio, because they do some really cool work. They're not really around anymore. They still have a website, but they do this really illustrative, cool, like, artwork. And I looked at their website, and I was like, yeah, that is cool. I want to do that. Okay, I want to do that. And so once I started working for Rocket, they told me, yeah, the movie poster industry, or the movie, just those things you see for movies, worst industry you could be in. Terrible hours, terrible pay. So let me rewind a little bit, because to get this job at Rocket, I had no idea who these people were, right? I don't know. They have this website, this really cool work on there, but I didn't know anything about Rocket. So what I started doing was calling them, and I sent over my resume, and I called them again, and they were like, yeah, no thanks. No thank you, we don't need anybody. And I was like, yeah, but I really want to work for you, like, so much. And I was working at Disney, so I had a job, but this is the job I really wanted. I wanted to learn how to do this kind of complex digital work. I was really interested in that. And I think that's what drew me to the movie posters, is you'd see this, like, it's not just retouch. It's complex, awesome, like, work. So I basically bugged Rocket to death. I mean, I tried to not call every day, but I called at least once a week. And I had no idea at the time, there's only 5 people that work there. I'm thinking it's this great big, like, you know, machine that's running and they've got 30 artists or something. There's 5 people that work there. So like the owner, the receptionist, and a salesperson and 2 artists. So they finally, like, I wore them down, but in a nice way. Like, you gotta find that line of like, I'm asking a lot because I still am interested. Because honestly, if somebody kept calling me or kept emailing me, I probably have only had like one person email me more than one time and say, could I assist you or help you out? I don't feel like people stick with it. They just kind of move on and try to find a job. To me, this wasn't a job. This was, I don't know, like an entire lifestyle change. This is what I wanted to do as an artist. I wanted to grow my work. I wanted to learn how to do different things. So to me, it wasn't just getting a job. I really wanted to work there. So eventually they called me and they said, okay, just come in and you could do like a trial. And they gave me a really, really hard file to work on and said, this is what we want you to do. I was comped up from the art director and said, these are the things to do. It was the hardest thing they've ever done in my life. And they said, cool. Well, it was for Sony PlayStation. And they didn't tell me, this is a job we've already done and we're just giving it to you to see what you're going to do. I'm thinking this might actually go to client, and I'm like, I'm not ready for this. But I did the work the best I could, and I said, how long should I spend on this? And they said, however long it takes you. And I'm like, but this could take like 2 weeks or 2 hours. Like I could do. So that was a lot of learning too, was like when they would throw things at me and be like, however long it takes you, or tell us how long it will take you. So a lot of learning in that sense, but we had some really cool clients. Like we did have M&M's, we worked for Porsche, we did a ton of stuff for Apple, which was really fun. Nobody has that in their portfolio because we all signed agreements, but like Apple used to come in with their briefcase, literally handcuffed to somebody's hand, like we were spies. But all this stuff was really top secret, and because we would be showing, we would doing ads for like the new iPod way back when, before there was iPhones, and they didn't want competitors to get the specs on it. So we all had to sign our lives away that we wouldn't even tell our spouses. So in this profession, I do a lot of, we call it code red jobs. Now I do a lot of car stuff that's like that. Like Toyota will have a new car coming out. They don't want anybody to see it. So I have a couple of cool stories about that. But so that's kind of my time at Rocket, was just like learning this stuff, learning how to do this. I had a couple great artists that worked there that taught me so much of what I know and that I use today. And one of the guys that I worked with there is now kind of, I work in a good partnership with. So he started his own business, and I do a ton of work with him. That's where I get all this LA work from my friend who I used to work with here. So we've known each other now like over 15 years. And he gets all the big car jobs like for Toyota and things like that. And then he just sends them up here. So I get to sit at home and work on these cool, I put a few on here, but had to work on some of these cool jobs that I never would be able to connect with these clients. And being in Spokane, I'd have to probably travel a lot. So having, again, that professional network that I connect to and talk to, and like then sends these big jobs from LA or Detroit or whatever my way while I'm sitting at my desk in my office at home in Spokane. So that's been pretty great to carry those connections back to Spokane with me. Allows me to work from home and be there for my kid as he was growing up. So although I didn't love living in LA, it did bring me a lot of contacts that I still connect with today. And I still work with a lot of those people. So after I left LA in about 2008, I moved back here to Spokane. And I had been pregnant, and my husband at the time and I both lost our jobs a week after we had the baby. And we were living in Venice Beach. We both have these amazing jobs, and the economy just went to crap. And so all these big advertising jobs, everybody that's in photography just tanked. Nobody had any work, and it was really hard to sustain, especially with a newborn. We may have been able to stay afloat, but he wasn't super capable, and so my parents were like, come home, we'll help you out. And so that's what landed me back in Spokane. I had a newborn baby. I just lost my job at Rocket. I was still getting some like freelance work from them, but it certainly wasn't enough to pay the rent in Venice Beach. And also having a child down there kind of like starts me thinking about, like, do I want my kid to grow up in LA? You know, how am I going to do daycare when I'm working advertising hours? Like, I often would work till 10 o'clock at night. Oftentimes I come in late too, and we don't have a job this week, so we're just working on portfolio samples or something. So, but it was real hit or miss. And then other times it's like we're working, you know, whatever, 20-hour days because the job has to get done. It has to get out. We're working late hours. And I don't think that everybody was going to appreciate it just being like, well, I got to go home and take care of the baby. Bye. So we didn't have family down there, and I was trying to figure out, like, how do I make this work? So moving back to Spokane was a little bit jarring for me because it was like we were kind of living this fast-paced life in LA, working on all these big jobs, and then it was like Spokane. How do you move back to Spokane from all that? But I found I really appreciated things that I didn't when I was 19 years old, that I was like, can't wait to get out of here. I'm going to run from this place as fast as I can. I'm never moving back. But then coming back after living in LA, you're like, oh my gosh, we can go walk in the forest. Oh, there's a river downtown. How cool. Like, we have parks that are green. And there was a lot that I was thankful for that I wasn't as a, you know, teenager or young adult. So, and then having a child, it's like the schools are better here, and I was excited about all of that. Being near family again was now exciting to me, or it wasn't back then. So I'm super glad I got to get out, work in all these big places, work for big studios, have experience with lots of big clients and art directors, and then being able to come back here and kind of start my own thing. It wasn't an easy start, though, I'll tell you that. I kind of came back and was like, ugh, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to start this thing, because I kind of decided I'm going to work for myself now. There's really nobody here to work for that I know of. And, you know, at that time, it wasn't like I wanted to work for someone else. I still wanted to do what I wanted to do with the retouching part. And I kind of wanted to get back into photography again, because after being a retoucher for years, I really did miss photography. So I very slowly started with things like, you know, my neighbor down the street was like, can you take pictures of me and my kids? And I'm like, oh God, no, I don't really do that. That's not what I do. And then she kind of talked me into it. And I did start doing some portrait photography. And I still do that today. I don't do a ton of it, but I do family pictures. I do senior portraits. I did a little bit of everything for a while until I figured out, like, I really hate doing newborn photos, and I'm not good at it. So I stopped doing it, even though, like, I'm trying to make my mortgage payment, but I think if I put more energy into the things I love doing, that I think it's going to come. And it did. And the more that I put energy into what I love doing and stop spreading myself too thin, I think the more successful that I am. And sometimes that's easier said than done. Sometimes you really just have to pay your rent or, you know, pay the bills to get the groceries. I did weddings for a while, and I don't do them anymore, only for friends or family and things like that, because I just felt it took up all of my weekend time with my kid, and he's getting older. There's only so many weekends I have with him, and also it's not the work I love. So I still love doing food photography, but there's not a lot of opportunity in Spokane to do that. I get some little stuff here and there, and I've done some things for Northern Quest, some bigger jobs for like, you know, I've done some food styling, which kind of helped do some more food photography, get into the food photography a little bit more, but there's not a huge market for it. So my best friend said to me, I've had a lot of good people ask me over the years, what do you really want to do? And that sounds like, you're like, I already know, I'm doing this. And you're like, actually, yeah, what do I really want to do? That's a good question to keep asking yourself through the years. And I've had friends ask me that, but what do you really want to do? If you could just do like, if you do anything you wanted to do, what would it be? And I realized it's like, that would be never weddings. That's never weddings. That's what I want to do. And I would like to shoot food, and I would like to keep retouching a lot. And that is what I do today, because I decided about 6 years ago, I'm going to make that happen. I'm like, it's just time in my career that I do exactly what I want to do. And that's where I decided to go. So I started my own food blog, which does help me, like, I create my own food, I get to style it and do all the things for it, and I'm slowly building that, and so hopefully one day that will be an income generator. And then I still do a ton of retouching, and I do a little bit of photography of families and things like that, but my preference is more commercials, commercial photography, or even like, you know, local business stuff, like branding for local businesses. So doing some small work here and there for people that own businesses. I prefer to do that over like a wedding. But I think in Spokane, it's a small market, so you do a little bit of everything. And I think when you live in a bigger market like Seattle, you specialize in something. Otherwise, you're being spread too thin. So it's good to know your market, to know what your skills are, to know what your wants are. What do you want to do is a really important question. I think a lot of people just keep going in what they're doing and don't ever ask themselves that. They're like, well, this is what I have to do because I have to pay the bills. Okay, but if you asked yourself that, what do you really want to do? If you could do anything, what would the answer be? And how do you get there? And I think you get there by asking questions. You get there by going, okay, if I really want to be a director for films, probably asking somebody who is a director for a film you like, how did you get there? Finding out that story might help you figure out your story. So I just have some, these are like some before and afters for the retouching. So I'm gonna take a few questions from you guys, and then maybe we could take a little break, and then I have one of these big car files that I want to break it down and show you exactly what went into it. I have 2 files that are kind of big, you know, tons and tons of layers, and I'll just show you the before and after, and kind of show you the process that we went through to get our end result. I think it's pretty interesting to see how far we can take some photos, or how like the automotive photography is done. Because a lot of times, some of this stuff is a little bit older. A lot of the car guys don't want to show you the before and afters anymore because they're pretty extreme. And it's like, so they don't want us retouchers having a lot of that stuff up, which is why I have like the campaigns to kind of show you. But I have permission from the car photographer I worked with to show you the whole process of it. It's kind of cool. Like one of the bigger guys that I work with, sometimes he'll give us this hard drive. He'll FedEx this hard drive with thousands of images on it. So one shot might have like 300 raw files. And occasionally they're like, could you just put that together? What? And other times we might get a comp. So it'll tell you what files we're using. It'll be low res, it'll be roughed out. Like this is the file we want for the headlights. This is the file we want for this. So I'm just gonna show you the build of one of those and then kind of all the files that we started with. Okay, bear with me. I'm used to working on a big dual monitor. Okay, so I was gonna show you guys just the build and breakdown of these big files. So this, we were working on a big campaign for Dodge. I'll show that to you real quick. I kind of touched on that a little bit when I was showing you one of these campaigns. So a lot of times when I get a job with the guy I work with out of LA, it's a big job. Like we'll work on we worked on a big Toyota job for 6 months. Sometimes it's a little shorter, like 3 months. We will hire, 10 other retouchers. So I'm the senior retoucher now, and I'll like oversee what other people are doing on a really big job like that. And then on something like this, we had so many jobs in at the same time that I was the only one that worked on this job. And then I worked pretty closely with the photographer, which isn't always the case. So I really enjoyed that. This photographer, his name's David Bush. He's super cool. He works out of Detroit. He was my favorite client I've ever worked for. He was the best communicator. He was just on it too. If I asked him for something, I think like on this file, I had to recreate this entire area here. And so I said, hey, do we have anything we could use there? And he shoots something right back that's appropriate for that space. So he was really great to work with. We don't always get that. Sometimes we're working with art directors that, I was just telling these guys, sometimes we'll work with an art director that digs up some crappy iStock photo that doesn't match the scene at all. And they're like, how about this? This is what we were thinking. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I make that work? One of the things at Rocket that the owner insisted upon is that we never say no. I can't do that. No, that's too hard. You were not allowed to say no. That was weird for me because I don't know. I didn't realize how often I might even go back to a client and go, this is going to be really hard. Or this is too tough. This is difficult. We were told we had to get the job done. Period. And sometimes we were allowed to say, that's going to cost you more. But we weren't allowed to say, no, I can't do that. So it pushed me a lot as an artist. Like I had to say, okay, if I have to say yes to this, how do I get this done? So these are the files that I was sent for this job, for this one file. So that whole campaign had an entire hard drive. This is for the one file. And this is not crazy. This is pretty light. So one of the other car photographers we work with, he will send you 200 files for one. So I just want to roll through here so you can see how he shot this. He shot different headlights, different streaks in the background. Like you can see the light streaks like here. And so when you get all this, you're like, cool, no problem. And you start putting it together and you're like, oh, I wonder what his intention was. What's that for? I can see there was purpose in that. But what exactly were they doing that for? And you have to start looking, like having the experience of working on like automotive photos for 15, 20 years, I can look at that and go, oh, I know why they shot that. They shot that for maybe like the rim right here on the car, like right here. But this is nice. It's nice to have a lot of options to choose from. I think what's worse is when you get 3 files and you're like, uh-oh, how are we going to make that look good? This is too much to choose from. There's no way I used all these files, but I had lots to choose from. So I'll show you the breakdown of this file, which is pretty cool. Okay. So here's where we're started. Let me turn that back on off and on a couple times so you can see it. And then I'll kind of just start from the bottom and build it up. So you can see there's a lot of background cleanup. And then obviously we've just rebuilt this entire car from all those different plates. And then added in some atmospheric stuff. We added in some smoke. Because you see that layer of like fog, how it really helps set apart that car from the building. And then some color work. So let me turn all these off. Okay, this is where we started. Then we took those headlights off. And brightened up that little piece in the foreground. You see that? And then just piece by piece started to add some things in, kind of like increasing the light on those streaks in the background. And some of these will be on, like you can see, that is on a screen layer. So not everything, you know, it's also knowing how to build these things with luminosity and screen and different layer styles and building this up. Okay, here's the cleanup. It might not seem like a lot, but it was a lot. And on this file, I was utilizing some of the new tools, like the remove tool. But what was interesting is when I was trying to take these phone lines out, and you look at it very closely, you can see it didn't do a good job. So I had to go in and do it old school. So sometimes these new tools, new AI features, new generative features are really cool and they're saving a lot of time. Or at first I thought, oh no, these things are going to take my job away. And then I use them and I'm like, no, they're not. Because they're not doing the job like I do. And maybe sometimes that is good enough, but not for some of these really high-end car retailers like Toyota and things like that are not going to put out a huge campaign with some telephone lines that aren't, maybe you could see the line when they're on a different kind of screen or print. Okay, so here's the smoke, which right now looks like it's in front of the car, but it's because I have a car up on top of that. So I did that with, these are all actually in normal layers, but I had some cool like smoke clouds and fog stamp like brushes that I just kind of stamped through there and then did them on different opacities. So you can, I mean, I can show you how, see, this does not look as cool without that smoke layer. And it's not excessive, so I don't think you look at it and go, ooh, that's a lot, that's what a haze. But little things like that I think we usually bring to a file that can really intensify how cool your photography is. So working with a retoucher, I think, like this guy doesn't have time, he does his own retouching, but on a big job like this, you know, they're looking for him to get files back. He's got, you saw that campaign, there's quite a few files. There's more than that were in the campaign, and he retouched like a third of them himself. But he doesn't have time to do all that. So sometimes if you're gonna be a top level photographer, you need other people that can do the job to assist you and make your work look better, because you can't do everything alone. Which is kind of what I was like talking like with that food photography thing. I thought, wouldn't that be fun to be a food photographer? Well, there's no time for me to cook all the things from this cookbook and decide how it's gonna look. And that makes sense. It makes sense to me now why that wasn't feasible. And I kind of felt like a button pusher at that point. I was like, yeah. But something like this, like doing the retouching portion, I love it. And usually photographers are happy to hand it over. They're like, great, I didn't wanna do that anyway. Let me show you some of the car stuff. So here's, you can see all the layers that there's a ton of stuff here. So like going all the way down to here is the car. And I have the car masked out. So we put all this stuff up on top of the car. So there's a big piece of that car is like one file. And then here's another file that we're using the front of the car. So just really piecing all this stuff together ends up creating all these cool, you see like that cool line on the side of the car creates dimension, where without it, it feels a little bit flat. So all those files that he did with intention because he's done this before and ended up creating this cool file in the end. So those are really fun to work on. Probably, I mean, something like this usually takes 8 to 12 hours of retouching. So you can imagine some of these are pretty high budgets, especially when we have, you know, hundreds of cars or images to do with someone big like Toyota or with Dodge. The budgets are usually pretty high and they're really fun to work on. Does anyone have any questions about that one? You guys are a big question group. Okay, so I'll show you this one. Let me close out this one. I'm going to show you a little bit different on this one. This was a photographer. She's based in Germany. And like she's a little bit less direction. So this is kind of like, you know, definitely not a comp. I don't get a comp from her. I get something like this. That's like remove objects, remove building, retouch sign, remove stuff, clean up floor, maybe everything, straighten the whole picture, skin editing, and maybe lighting up the leg part. Okay, those were my instructions. Let's see. What else did I wanted to show you? There was another little... Okay, I had a little comp from her that showed the other thing that she asked for was she wanted it to have a Wes Anderson feel. And so she had done like a little PDF that had 6 different photos. I have it somewhere. That had six different pictures of a Wes Anderson style. And I had to ask my son because I was like, who's Wes Anderson? And he was like, Mom. I'm like, sorry, I don't know. So he schooled me and I looked at the PDF and kind of like, oh, okay, I get who that is. So sometimes we'll get instructions like that too. Because that is either what the photographer or the client is looking for. So let me show you the beginning on this. So that's what I started with. And then that's where we ended up. So you could see like if she turns this into her client, this is way cooler. And this is not nearly as big of a job, but I just thought it was a really fun one that I did. So let me turn this off and kind of just walk you through that again because it's pretty fun to see. So I believe we took these legs. No, it does not. We're taking the legs. But okay, so I started out with the sign text. We just changed that. The brand is maple syrup or whiskey or something. I think it's actually a whiskey. I don't know what, it has something to do with maple syrup. We did a whole campaign for them too. I'll show you that really quick. It's pretty fun. So we got all these photos and some of them are more complex than others. Like this one had, we had to add an extra hand in here and I don't think the syrup is actually pouring. This is just a fun job to work on. All these drink shots were pretty straightforward, but most of these drinks were like kind of black. So it was, you know, brightening up some of the drinks, cleaning up the shots, and then making everything look like it went together. So campaigns are often like that where we'll have like, we may receive a mood board and then we're coming up with a standard. This is what everything should look like. And so it helps have 1 or 2 retouchers that are working on it, not a whole crew. The whole crew makes it hard, which is why like when we have those big jobs, that someone's in charge that it funnels through. So we can maintain a look if they're looking for that. So let me show you the breakdown on that one. Okay, so we did the sign. And just some cleanups here, cleanups on the ground. Took those rocks out. It's a little thing, it just makes it a little less distracting. You can just see little things, you can see the legs and the background there, just taking out, again, it's just distractions that are pulling your eye away from the women in the middle of what we want you to keep your eyes on. So taking these things out. So, I don't know, as a photographer, you might have in mind, these are very distracting and you might go in and do a really thorough workup and circle things and say, I want all these things taken out to your retoucher. Or you might have someone you trust and you just turn it over and say, can you make this better? Okay. And then replacing that sky made a big deal. You can see that. And then just even taking out the sunshine area. And then we did some adjustments on the top, which kind of create that Wes Anderson look, and adding a bit of grain, and that's it. And then that file probably was a shorter one, probably more like a 6-hour file. Even though it's not as heavy as that car one, it was still a lot of work. So I'll show you guys one more real quick. And then you can ask all your other questions. Just since we were talking about the difference of like a photographer providing files and having an idea of what they're shooting and how they want it to look. It's good, whether you're your own retoucher and you're the photographer, if you are doing something more complex, sorry, this file's huge, 14 gigabyte file. If you're shooting something more complex and you can think about it ahead of time, is there anything, if I have to fix something, maybe there's no way around it, I have to shoot it like this. Is there something else that I can shoot to help myself make this better later? Okay. So this is what I started with on this one. And one of the things that this photographer did, which was awesome, this is one of those, this car was not shot at that location. This car was a code red at the time. So this is, I think this is in Santa Monica that they shot the background. And you can see it's pretty, but I made it way prettier. That building is so much more interesting with the colors on it. So this is what you actually see if you drove by. But they couldn't shoot the car there because it was a code red car. So I'll show you where they shot the car. It's a whole different location. But one of the things that they did that was very cool was he shot the grass separately at a different location. So there's the grass. But he knew we had to replace this grass because of how that looked. And so with that intention, he went out and shot that for us to work with. So this is one of our top photographers. His name is Jeff Alberts, and he's an amazing photographer, and he's probably the best person at giving, he's the most complicated. He gives very complicated files to us, but he's also the best at describing what he wants. He has a vision in his mind of what he wants this to look like that's very well thought out, and he ends up with great results because of it. So the other thing I just want to show you this car, because this car was not shot there. So you can see this car was shot in this parking lot. Undercover, basically. They have like pop it out because this whole car industry is very interesting, and I'm always shocked. Really? They go to those kind of lengths, but they'll have like airplanes, or helicopters going overhead to try to spy on each other's cars, which car is coming out, and all this stuff. So we have to sign all these NDAs, and so the talent was put into this one separately. The shadow of the talent is put in separately. The car is separate, but you could see like he shot that car very well. We didn't do a ton of retouching to it, but it looks like it belongs there. I'm buying it. I think most people would. So that's our job, is like, what if like the photographer literally could not bring this to the location that they wanted and shoot it? It was impossible. So that's where some of the retouching comes in here, which is really cool. But we need a good photographer to start with. So, all right, that's about all I have. Do you guys still no questions? Well, feel free to come up, ask me something afterwards. I'll be here for a few minutes. I'll leave some of my cards I'll leave some of them up here if anybody wants to take one. Feel free to email me if you have some questions. Like I said, make connections before you graduate.
I've got a question. You were saying like projects are like 6 hours, 8 to 12 hours. Is there a range of like how much your cost on that for those files would be? Give an idea of how much the post-production costs on these files might range?
Like how much a photographer would be paying for that?
Yeah.
A lot.
Is there a like industry range for an image, say it takes 12 hours
Mm-hmm.
for average retoucher?
My guess is they're paying around at least $200 an hour. That's probably a pretty good. And we usually do a lot of estimating before these things. And I've gotten really good at that. That was a hard thing that took many years. It was so somebody sends us and goes, here's what we're gonna want. How many hours do you think it will take? And, you know, it takes a couple of times maybe getting it wrong. And having to, but it's a, you know, that's okay. Sometimes if you get it wrong too and you say, okay, but it's always checking in with your client and saying, this is taking me longer than I thought, and here's where we're at. Or I've reached a point where it's pretty good. I'd really like to spend 4 more hours on it. What do you think? And maybe you guys come to a decision that they have the budget for 2 more, but not 4 more. And you're like, great, I have a little bit more work I'd like to do on this. But sometimes you have to eat the cost too. If you were really wrong or you screwed up pretty bad, you know, it's that hurts. And then that leads you to figure out a better hour estimate for next time. So some of that's learning.
So on your files there, you try to make all your edits non-destructive so you can reverse them?
Yep, absolutely. So especially if, let's say your client is super happy. My client is so happy with this image. He loves it. But then it goes to the agency, and the agency goes, we can't have any red in that picture for whatever reason. And you're like, what? Or we can't use that talent because, like, we had this problem at Northern Quest recently where all the talent we used had been provided by a talent agency, and all these people had done a ad for a different casino. And the photographer didn't know it. His producer had hired these people through a talent agency. But guess what? The client, Northern Quest, found out and was like, we can't use any of this. We're not going to use any of this because all of this talent was just in a ad for a rivalry casino. That looks wrong. It looks weird. So it could be something even with talent where they go, we don't like that talent. And so if it was on a destructive layer, we'd be screwed. You'd have to try to take that out, or, you know, like I said, maybe they decide that they don't like that work on the building. That I can go, even after we've done the car, my building is separate. And all of those layers were separate. Or it's common that they might go, we don't like the clouds in the sky. And you're like, why? What's wrong with the clouds in the sky? So you may be over there going, why? But somebody doesn't like something about it, then I can go back under all those layers, fix something that's happening. So even the shadows are on separate layers. Or they might go, you know what, we decide we don't like the color of that car anymore, we want to use the red one. And so we can go into that whole car layer and fix something on the color of that car. So everything's non-destructive, tons and tons of layers. That's probably why this file is 15 gigabytes. So we're working on, everything's on layers. Sometimes I have a retoucher return something to me that's been flattened, and that's a huge no-no. And sometimes we don't hire those people again. If we've asked for layered files and they're like, well, I have a reason why, and it's like, now that's bad for us because if the client asks for something, we can't fix it. Or it's another, we have to spend the extra time to go in. And then not only do you have the agency, these jobs have a photographer, they have an agency, and then only after it clears both of those people does it go to client. So after this, then it goes to Toyota. And Toyota usually has something, then it's like, oh, there might be something that they don't like about it. And so having all those layers, having everything movable and changeable, we decided we want the guy on the other side. Because you're like, why? They're like, because we're going to put copy over there. And you're like, oh, okay. Well, now we can just move that guy because he's on a separate layer. I don't know which layer, but he's on another layer in here. There's a shadow. All right, any other questions? Okay, cool. Well, thanks for coming.